Welcome, everyone, to this really special online event with Neale Donald Walsch on our topic, Conversations with God, the 3 secrets to end the struggle and start making your life work. I'm Arielle Ford, author of The Soulmate Secret and Wabi Sabi Love, and I'm also part of the wonderful team at Evolving Wisdom, the organization hosting tonight's event. Our mission here at Evolving Wisdom is to give all of you immediate access to the world's leading teachers and human potential experts, as well as create a global community of friends, supporters, and allies to support you on your journey so you can reach your highest potentials in every area of your life. Tonight I have the great privilege and honor of hosting one of the most generous, inspiring, and loving people I've ever met. He's my dear friend and our special guest, Neale Donald Walsch. He's a New York Times bestselling author whose Conversations with God books have sold more than 10 million copies over 20 years. I've had the great good fortune to know Neale for more than 15 years. And he really, truly is one of the most remarkable men on the planet. He travels all around the world speaking to packed houses everywhere. Hundreds of thousands of people from all corners of the globe have participated in events that we've held with Neale. And each time we create a new one, the response we get is just incredible. We've also partnered with him by offering the Conversations with God 7-week online course that has helped people from around the world completely and totally transform their lives. Now, I've personally been following his work from the very beginning, and I can tell you, nobody holds the keys to ending the struggle in life more than Neale does. He's lived this in his own life, in his own journey, through the depths of sorrow, through hardship and loss, and then he went on to great heights of success and fulfillment. And he now tirelessly devotes his life to helping others experience the same ease and freedom and joy that he's discovered is available when you shift your own relationship to God. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Neale Donald Walsch so we can start talking about the 3 secrets to ending the struggle and making your life work.
Well, thank you. Those are very kind words, and I have to disavow them immediately and at once.
Well, I've known you a long time, Neale, and you are the real deal. And I'm really excited that we're going to get to explore the topic of ending the struggle. So let's start off tonight by inviting you to share about your own journey, the really painful challenges that you experienced, and how you changed your life from that fateful day when you began a conversation with God.
Well, my life has been a series of very difficult chapters, as well as very wonderful, joyous, and extraordinarily celebratory moments, like everyone else's, I would imagine, or like at least many other people. But it has been the difficult chapters which have brought me the greatest areas of growth. And what happened in my life was that I grew into adulthood feeling that, gosh, life was just a bowl of cherries. I had everything at my fingertips. I had the Midas touch. I had lots of talent, lots of ability, lots of skills. I had some degree at least of charm. I was able to get through life fairly well. And as a young man, I felt like Michael J. Fox on that television program Family Ties from years ago, where he walked around, a little briefcase and a tie, a white shirt and a tie and a suit when he was 16 years old. That was me. I was a corporate executive in terms of how I was modeling myself from the time I was 16 years old. So when I got to be 21 and actually moved into the real world, to me it was just like arriving at where I had always been. And things fell into place for me. It seemed like, in fact, I did have the Midas touch. I got a wonderful job in broadcasting when I was 19 years old. I became a program director at the age of 21. And in fact, I worked in management positions at every place of my employ. From the age of 21, I was always moved into management wherever I was. So to make a long story short, everything was going well for me in my life. I always earned more money than I needed. I had lots of friends. I had wonderful relationships. Things were just perfect. And then somewhere along the way, I seemed to have lost the Midas touch. Everything began to fall apart. And I suddenly couldn't make anything work. And I got to the age of 50 where I noticed that one thing after another was falling apart. My health was going rapidly downhill. My relationships were falling apart, and I couldn't hold them together, for love or money. And my career as well seemed to have reached a dead end. All three things began to fall apart all at once, as opposed to how it is sometimes in other people's lives. Maybe the career isn't doing so well, but the relationship is solid. Or the relationship's a bit rocky, but the career is doing okay. Or both of those things are fine, but your health isn't so good. But in my case, all three things happened at once. Health failed, career failed, relationships failed. It was the triple whammy. And I wound up sitting there in the darkness of the night one night when I was around 50 years old. And I called out to God, what does it take to make life work? I don't get it. What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? Somebody tell me the rules. Will you just tell me the doggone rules? I'll play. I promise I'll play. Just give me the rule book. And after you give me the rules, don't change them. Because I always had the experience that I was playing by the rules, and then somebody would change the rules. And so I was deep into depression. And one night I got up and actually wrote those questions down on a piece of paper. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:20 in the morning. And I wrote those questions down on a yellow legal pad. I was just frustrated and angry and annoyed. And I heard a voice over my right shoulder that said to me, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? And I said to myself laughingly, thinking that I'm, talking to myself here, I said to myself, well, of course I want answers. I don't have any answers. If you have them, please give them to me. I actually heard, I want you to know, a real voice in the room. It was not like the sound of my own thoughts. It became that eventually, but the very first communication was an actual voice in the room. As sure as I'm sitting here, I tell you that. So it was an extraordinary moment in my life, and I picked up a pen I was writing with on my yellow legal pad already, and I began to write down everything that I was hearing in my mind about the questions that my heart was calling out to have answered. And that began what I want to call a dialogue, an on-paper conversation, where I would write down a question, and even before I would get the question written down completely, the answer would already come to me. And I want you to know that the reason I was writing this all out and not just sitting there having it in my mind was the experience was so profound, I wanted to have a record of it. I was keeping a personal journal. I thought, okay, I'm going to journal this out because something's going on here that's quite extraordinary. So I began to do what I thought was a personal journaling process. It never occurred to me in a gazillion years that anybody outside of myself, and only myself, would ever read or have access to what I was writing there on the yellow legal pad. But about a third of the way through this question and answer process, where I would ask a question and get the answer downloaded to me, I was told this will one day become a book. And I thought to myself, yes, of course, you and 100 other, middle-of-the-night mental meanderers are going to send your writings to a publisher, who's going to say, we got to get this out at once. This guy's talking to God. But in fact, that's exactly what happened. I did send it to a publisher just to test, to see if what I was receiving in terms of information had any validity at all. And here was a measurable outcome. This was measurable. It would either be a book or it wouldn't. So I sent it off to a couple of publishers, 5 to be exact, and one of them wrote back to me, or called me really, and said, we want to publish this book. We want to put this out. And they did, and within 90 days it made the New York Times bestseller list, much to my shock and surprise, where it stayed for 2.5 years, eventually being translated into 37 languages and read around the world and selling millions and millions and millions of copies. And here I sit now on the other end of that experience. Of course, the experience didn't stop when what became the first book. They just simply took a number of my yellow legal pads, typed them up, and put them in the book. But I was continuing with the process because it was, for me, a very personal experience. That experience continues to this very day.
I just love that story, Neale. And I am so glad that you asked God all those questions and turned it into a book, because it impacted my life in such a tremendous way. But what I really want to know right now is, how did life change for you when you applied the insights that you were getting from God? Did the struggles you were experiencing start to disappear?
Well, life changed almost immediately, almost overnight. I had a whole different outlook on life, a whole different reason for living my life, what the French call raison d'être. I had a whole different reason for being. I understood life at a whole different level. I began to comprehend what was really going on here, who I really am, why I'm really here, and what is occurring on the face of the earth among all sentient beings, and for that matter, everywhere in the universe, if you please. And as I began to have that comprehensive view of all that was occurring, I began to apply what I understood in my daily interactions. And the result was an enormous and rapid shift in my relationship experience, in my financial experience, in my physical experience, that is, my experience of physical health. I began to feel better and healthier at 50 and later on at 55 and 60 than I did at 35 and 40 and 45, interestingly enough. I feel healthier today than I did when I was 40 years old. And so those are the three areas of my life, health, finances, and relationship, where I've seen enormous shifts. But here's the irony of it. I really don't care anymore. This is interesting. The interesting thing is that the things I yearned for and were reaching for so earnestly years ago, better health, finally a relationship that works, financial stability, now don't matter to me. I mean, I'm not striving for any of those things. And it seems by some twist of the energy and how it works that when I stopped yearning for it and stopped reaching for it and stopped struggling for it, it fell in on me without effort.
Wow. And isn't that what we all want, just to have it all fall into our lap? So what strikes me right now is that your standing point was at, here you were at this level of devastation and despair, and it's, beyond what many people are experiencing, and yet, look what happened.
Well, yeah, what I left out of the story was I wound up living on the street for a year. There was a point in time in my life when not only was everything falling apart, I experienced having, it seemed to me that I had no resources with which to paste it back together. I had no glue, no way to hold it back together. So really everything fell apart. I wound up losing everything. My family, I lost, through a divorce and a separation and a divorce, I lost my family in a sense. Of course, I had my children that I could visit, and I lost any chance of getting a job. And then, now get a load of this, to make matters worse, I have an automobile accident. I'm driving down the road, mulling over how bad my life has become, and to make matters worse, a wonderful 85-year-old gentleman, an elderly person, turned right in front of me, smashed into my car, and I wind up with a broken neck. And so, of course, they take me to the hospital, and, they're telling me, you got a broken neck, and, now you have to understand that very few people survive a broken neck. And those who do survive it do not survive it. The number of people who survive a broken neck without paralysis, without a terrific shift in their physical experience is minuscule. I somehow escaped that experience, but it took me 2.5 years of physical therapy. I walked around with what they call a Philadelphia collar around my neck for about 18 months, and then they took that collar off, but the physical therapy continued for another 1.5 years after that. Almost 3 years of recovery. During which I could not work, you see, because I had a broken neck and I was very fragile. I was told not to lift so much as a half gallon of milk with my arm extended. I had to make sure everything took place within 6 inches of the front of my body, because if I extended my reach, I was creating pressure on that broken neck and it would cause irrevocable damage. So I learned to live an entirely different way, walking around with a collar supporting my head for 1.5 years, and nobody would hire me. I would walk in to apply for a job, and nobody would even talk to me, because who wants to hire a walking, a claim on health insurance? So I couldn't get a job anywhere. I ran out of my savings very quickly, and I wound up living on the street. Not for a week, not for a month or two, but for an entire year. 2 weeks shy of 1 year, I was out there on the sidewalk, and the only income I had was what I could get people to give me in the palm of my hand. Sir, do you have a quarter, a dime? Just some small change. A little bit could help me. or what I could get by picking up cans and bottles in the park and taking them to the redemption center at the various stores around town and maybe get 35 cents here, $1.50 there, $3.25 here, enough to maybe go to one of the fast food joints and buy myself a burger. And I lived that way for a year. So it went from bad to worse, except that it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Wow. I can't even imagine what that year was like for you. Even though I've heard the story many times, my heart still breaks. But ultimately, it is such an empowering story because so many of us right now feel like life just couldn't get any worse. We have these feelings, this sense of isolation and loneliness, and there are times when we just feel like giving up. And yet, I hear from you there was something very deep and profound that happened to you that enabled you to turn this really dreadful experience into a radically different life where suddenly there's flow and ease, and you were able to contribute and impact others with your gift. And I've heard from the graduates of your courses and for those who work closely with you that this is the change that happens, that this is what the transformation that you provide for people. And right now, could you share from your own experience what happens to people when they do embody these same core insights?
Yeah, well, I don't want to brag, and I don't want to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but in fact, what you've said is absolutely true for me as I've observed people who have done interactive processes with me, either in a on-location workshop, seminar, retreat, or for that matter, in the Evolving Wisdom courses that I have already presented, that people have written to me afterward and said to me, I don't know how to tell you this, but my whole life has changed. I just got to notice a little posting on my Facebook page just 2 days ago from a person who says, I did your course with Evolving Wisdom last year. I've been applying those principles every day in my life since then, and I cannot even begin to describe. There's not enough space on Facebook to describe how everything has changed in my life. Everything, this gentleman was telling me, his relationships, his financial life, even, in fact, his physical health. His doctor is saying that his blood count, just to give you an example, he was sharing with me that his blood count had even gotten better, that his cholesterol, had gone way down. And so he was a much healthier person as well. And so and I don't want to make that this is not a promise here. I don't want to say to everybody, you do these things and your life will absolutely positively turn around and become, a joy and a celebration, and it can't miss. The truth is it can't miss, honestly. It can't miss, but it may not show up in exactly the way you want it to, in precisely the form you have in mind, or inside of the timing that you imagine should be perfect in your particular case. So those are some of the secrets that I share with people, is that if you can get rid of your expectations with regard to timing and form and content, and allow life to demonstrate itself to you, through you, as you, in the way that it will, rather than the way that you have predetermined it needs to be, you will find yourself in exactly the place that you have yearned to be. However, the purpose of life has nothing to do with that, interestingly enough, and that's what I meant earlier when I was alluding to the fact that when I let go of my need for financial stability, the perfect partner in my life, health, that I look like, one of those bodybuilders. When I let go of all those things I thought life was supposed to look like and just allowed myself to release myself from those expectations, suddenly many of those things, I do not look like a bodybuilder, by the way, but some of the other things actually began to show up in my life and, as I said before, began to fall in on me without effort. I couldn't keep it away from me if I tried. And so I see now that the secret of life is much more profound and applicable to daily experience than I ever thought it was. But unfortunately, nobody came along when I was 6 or 8 or 12 or 15 or 20 or 25 or 30 or 45 or even 50. It took me a half century to even get close to some of these secrets. And frankly, in the past 15 or 20 years, since I've had the conversations with God experience, I've explored them even more deeply and come up with even deeper and, I want to say, newer ways of framing and articulating the insights that I've received in my conversations with God.
So, Neale, you wrote more than 3,000 pages about your dialogues with God, and you've spent tens of thousands of hours teaching since the books have come out. How did you distill the essence of how people can end the struggle in their life with these three secrets?
Well, it's interesting, in fact, how that happened. I never really sat down and tried to codify or summarize or make an outline of what I would call the three major secrets of the Conversations with God material. I'm not sure that I would be capable of doing that because there are, in fact, 3,000 pages of it. I've read those 3,000 pages over and over and over again, but it never occurred to me to try to sit down and reduce it to three simple statements. But what happened in my life was a person who's very, very close to me, one of the best friends that I've ever had in the world, came to me, actually rather recently, and said, could I have a minute of your time? I said, sure, of course. And we talked, and I said, what's up? And she said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I've read your books, and I believe what you've written, and I've applied it in my life, and for that matter, the books of other masters as well. There are many, many teachers out there and wonderful sources of information. And by golly, I've tried to do all the things those books tell me to do, and nothing is working. And I'm done. I'm so done. And she began to cry a bit. We were having dinner together, and she began to weep a bit. And she said, Neale, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't believe in this stuff anymore. I don't, because nothing is working. And you're my last resort in a sense. Can you help me? Can you tell me, how does it work? And why is it not working for me? That's how the so-called three secrets of life emerged from me, not as a process or a result of me sitting down and outlining those things after looking at the material again, but rather spontaneously as a conversation that I was having with another person in which I was trying to sift through what I thought I understood and knew on this subject and give it to this person in as brief a time as possible, because we only had a dinner together. We weren't going to spend, 5 weeks in therapy. So it was like, what can I bring to this person? And you know what? Necessity is the mother of invention. Somehow or another, I managed to take the 3,000 pages of material and reduce it to three major bullet points. I didn't plan it that way. It's just how it came out. I said, you know what? There are three things I want to share with you. Number one, your growth process is complete. Number two, there's nothing going wrong in your life, nor has there ever been. And number three, you're not alone. And this person looked at me like, could you extrapolate on that a little bit? Can you help me with that? I said, sure. And then I just ran through those points, and it turned out that they are, in fact, what I would call the three biggest secrets that I learned in my conversations with God. Is it okay if I describe them to you?
Yes, I insist. So let's start with the first secret.
The biggest secret of life is that our growth process is complete. In fact, I'll go further. Growth was never necessary to begin with. That you were completely evolved when you came here. That is, at the moment of your birth. You were born in a state of utter perfection. And if you want to see perfection, perfection personified, as I call it, just look into the eyes of a baby. You will see it there. Nothing is wanted, nothing is needed, nothing is missing. You're looking into the face of perfection. But most people don't understand that they were finished with what they imagined they came here to do before they arrived. That the purpose of life was not to somehow get better or grow up, grow up spiritually, or to become somehow more than you now are. That the purpose of life is not to become more than you are, but to be who you are and who you were the moment you arrived. Now, the problem is if we think we are here to become somehow more than we were when we arrived, that the purpose of life is to evolve into something greater, the problem with that is we think that there's something we have to do or to be or to have, that we have to acquire something somehow or another, more wisdom, more understanding, more clarity, and for that matter, that there are physical things we need to acquire as well in order to be the fullest expression of who we really are. But the process works exactly in reverse. In fact, there's nothing for us to be or to do or to have that we are required to be, do, or have in order to express who we really are. The process works precisely in reverse. We are not here to acquire anything, but to give everything. We are not here to acquire, but to give, to demonstrate. Life is about demonstration. It's not about evolution. So we've not come here to somehow get stuff, even to get more wisdom, more clarity, more understanding, none of that. We are here to give and to demonstrate the clarity, the understanding, the awareness, the consciousness that we came in here with. However, the culture teaches us exactly the opposite. The culture into which we were born here on this planet teaches us you know nothing, you got a lot to learn, you got a long way to go, buddy, blah, blah, blah. And furthermore, interestingly enough, some of the religious culture actually teaches us that what we need to learn, what we need to understand is ultimately ungraspable. That is, it's out of our reach. And what I understood then in this flash of insight that I received in my conversations with God is that you are perfect just the way you are right now. Or to put it in simple terms, which is difficult for some people to grasp or to embrace, you are divine. That is, you are my begotten child. Not just my only begotten son, but you are all my begotten sons and daughters, in whom I am well pleased. And your job is not to somehow get better or become more than you are now, but simply to demonstrate who you are right now. And why? Why bother demonstrating who you are right now? What's the purpose of that? So that, I was informed, God might know itself experientially through the expression of life in every one of its forms, including the form that we call you. Now, what this meant to me as a practical matter, how you apply that kind of insight into daily life, because people say to me, well, okay, great, but how does that work in 9-to-5 life, is that I discovered that when I give what I wanted to receive as if I already have it, then I would experience the havingness of it. Let me be real clear about that. God put this to me in conversations with God in 3 simple words: be the source. Be the source became the guiding principle of my life. And whenever I found myself wanting anything, gee, I wish I had a little bit more money right now. Gosh, I wish I had a little bit better, smoother going in my relationship. Gosh, I wish my health was a little bit better. Or I wish I had more wisdom, more clarity, more understanding, more awareness. I wish I had more of something or another. Whenever I found myself wishing for more, I would sit down and think, I wonder if there's anybody else around me in my life, friend or stranger, who also wants more of that, who might even imagine themselves to have less of that than I do. Gee, I wonder how that might work. And I began to decide that I would be the source of what I wished to experience in my own life in the life of another. And so I went out and looked for people who imagined that they did not have enough money, and I gave them some of the money that I had, even though, as a practical matter, I was experiencing that I did not have enough money. I just decided to say to myself, what if I had enough? What if what I had right now, it was enough? And what if it was so much, in fact, that I could actually afford to give some of it away? And I began to give away what I thought I had not enough of. I did the same thing in other areas of my life. I wanted more patience, more understanding, more compassion, more partnership, really. And I found other people who wanted more of the same thing. It's not easy, by the way, it's not difficult, I should say. I'm trying to say it's not difficult to find people like that. It's easy to find them. They're all over the place. So I simply found people who wanted the same thing I wanted, and I decided to be the source of it, to be the source of compassion, of caring, of understanding, of patience, of forgiveness, and of companionship, and of love. And what I discovered was that when I was a companion to another and to all others whose lives I touch, suddenly I was companioned, and I was never lonely anymore. When I was the source of patience and understanding and compassion in the lives of others, suddenly I experienced those same things flowing through me, because I discovered that what flows through you sticks to you. And I was able to suddenly experience my havingness of what I thought I didn't have enough of. And as I began to experience my havingness of it, that experience of havingness, what I call in my cosmology havingness, that experience of having that actually acted as a magnet and drew more of it to me because my purpose was not to have it all for myself, but to give it away. Now, get this twist. My purpose was not to have it for myself, but to give it away. And when your purpose is to give it away to others, the universe supplies you with an unlimited amount of it because it knows there are a lot of people out there who are suddenly depending on you to be the source of it. And that's the secret of every master who has ever walked the earth. From Jesus to the Buddha, to Muhammad, to any master who has walked the face of the earth, they have become masters by giving what it is they chose to experience to others, and the universe has supplied them with an ample amount of it that they would never run out, because their initial motivation was not to gather it all for themselves, but simply to be a flow-through that others might have it in abundance. That's why some of the masters actually said in these words, I have come that you might have life in abundance and live it even more abundantly. That was their whole purpose, their whole raison d'etre. And when it becomes yours and mine, everything will change.
Gosh, I wish you could see me right now, Neale, because I have like the biggest smile on my face. And I feel like there's champagne bubbles going through my entire system because I so really feel the power of what you're speaking to. And let me see if I can just reflect back some of this. So it's like so many of us in the world right now are focusing on our deficiency and our lack and all the ways that we're imperfect and all the ways we need to do, be, or have something else before we get to actually be who we are. And I hear you saying that by giving that up and stepping into a consciousness of my growth is complete, and that instead of actually stepping forth and that life is not about me, but focusing on needing to become or do or be something different, but to actually step right now inside the assumption that I am perfect, I'm complete and whole, and if I begin to express that and give it to other people, this is what you're saying. Am I getting that?
That's exactly right. And one of the things people can do right now, by the way, right today as part of this particular seminar, I invite people to take a look at ways in which you have already experienced the completion of your evolutionary process. People kind of like, what? I'm not sure what you mean. I say, no, really. I want you to count the ways. Remember the times in your life when you actually expressed yourself at the level of mastery. What I've discovered is that most people are trained, they're culturalized to deny that. They get into, oh, shucks, this old thing. Kind of like you say to a lady, I love that dress. Oh, shucks, this old thing. So we're culturalized to deny it. But when I want to say gently required them, no. I know there was a moment in your life when you said or did something that only a master would say or do. What was it? They could almost all come up with one or two of those things. I say, aha. So that was a case in which you knew who you really were and you expressed and experienced that. And we began to gather the stories in real time of people who could, in fact, acknowledge and express their mastery. And I said, now that you think that was an unusual thing, that it's something that is not part of your real nature, and that you somehow simply rose to the occasion. But I am telling you that you are rising to the occasion all the time. How do you suppose you've gotten through to this moment right now? You're talking to me now and telling me nothing is going right, things are horrible, I can't take it anymore, yet here you are still at the front lines. That is mastery. And that is evidence of mastery. That is evidence of your mastery. And your willingness to even search for the next answer is evidence of your mastery as well. Now let's just take that evidence and turn it around and allow other people to experience the mastery that you have already demonstrated. And you will see the whole of your life shift virtually overnight.
So I'm imagining what it would be like to live life with that kind of consistency without any kind of attachment on what's going to happen as a result of that, and to be able to generate a very different energetic vibration, the frequency, around me and my relationships and my relationship to life, and And I can see how huge changes could happen really, really quickly. This is just so exciting. So you covered the first secret, that our growth process is complete. What's the second secret, that nothing is going wrong in life, nor has it ever?
Well, the second statement that just erupted from my being when I was chatting with my wonderful close one recently is that everything in life is going perfectly, and you think that it's not. And so the secret here is to turn frustration into celebration, because what you resist persists. Yet what you look at through the eyes of your soul disappears. That is, it ceases to have its illusory form. But we don't understand, most people, and I didn't either before my conversations with God, why are things turning up the way they are? It's all very nice to say that everything is perfect, but it sure doesn't feel perfect to me. Unless you know what it is you're trying to do, and unless you deeply understand the process that is required in order to do it. In that case, you would see the perfection. And that was the second simple statement that Conversations with God gave me. Statement number 1, be the source. Statement number 2, see the perfection. These are 3-word statements that shifted my whole life. Be the source, see the perfection. Well, how could I see the perfection of living on the street for a year, or having no money, or having my relationship fall apart and my family ripped away from me and my health going downhill? What's perfect about that? Do you mind if I ask? And God would say to me, look, what is happening here is that you are expressing and experiencing the essence of who you really are. And in order to experience the essence, and you're doing that, by the way, God said, as, how can I put this in the vernacular to make it simple, as a favor to me, so to speak. That is, God has created the experience of life itself in physicality as an expression in experience of who and what divinity actually is in its totality. God simply seeks to know itself experientially and is using what you and I call physical life and everything in it, including us, as the means by which to do that. But here's the great secret that Conversations with God told us. In the absence of that which we are not, that which we are is not. That is, it can't be experienced. It can't be expressed. And God gave me a very simple example so that my mind, because my mind couldn't wrap itself around that. When God said that to me, I said, oh, come on, help me out. I mean, I'm not really very advanced here in my thinking process. Could you make that simple for me? God said, sure. Supposing that you decided that you are the light. Let's use a really simple example. Just say these words to me, Neale. I am the light. I said, okay, I am the light. God said, great. Now, how would you know you are the light if there weren't darkness? If you were like a candle in the sun, you'd be there all right, along with a million kajillion other candles, but you wouldn't know yourself as the light because you are, in fact, amidst a million kajillion other candles. The sun wouldn't be the sun without you, by the way. Nay, it would be the sun without one of its candles, and that would not be the sun at all. But how to know yourself as the light amidst the light? And I said, to God, well, you're God, figure something out. And God said, I already did. I will surround you with darkness. Yet when you are surrounded with darkness, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but use the darkness that you might know who you really are. Be a light unto the darkness, that you might express who you really are, and that all those who see you would know who you really are, and by the light of your example, who they really are as well. So I said to God, okay, great example. I like the illustration. I mean, my mind can hear that, but how does that work on day-to-day on-the-ground life? How do I deal with the so-called darkness that's being foisted upon me, that I encounter every day in my life, to say nothing about the world around me? God said, there's a real simple trick here, Neale. It's called gratitude. Gratitude is the attitude. Your job is to be grateful for That is, to be thankful for every condition and circumstance of life, no matter how imperfect you imagine that it is, because in fact it is perfectly designed, perfectly created, and has been called forth by you and all those around you in a collaborative effort in a perfect way to present the perfect opportunity for you to perfectly express perfection itself in you, through you, as you. So if you wish to express yourself as kindness or compassion or caring or patience or understanding or love or forgiveness, would you not need conditions and circumstances within which you could become kind, caring, compassionate, loving, and forgiving? Would you not need something to forgive in order to experience yourself as forgiving? Well, yes, I would, God, yes, but does it have to be so much? God said, depends on how much of a master you want to be. The higher level of mastery you call forth, the higher will be its opposite number in the contextual field. But if you judge it, make it wrong, if you resist it, it will become virtually, in your imagination, insurmountable. Only by embracing and accepting it, by actually blessing it, by actually, if you can imagine, being grateful for it, by saying, thank you, God, for this one more chance to announce and declare, to express and to fulfill, to become and to demonstrate who I really am. And that's why every great teacher, and one of my favorite teachers is Jesus, so I often use him a lot. But all the great teachers in their own language have all said the same thing. Bless, bless, bless those who persecute you. And be a light unto the darkness. And curse the darkness not. And if a man asks you for your shirt, give him your coat as well. And if a man asks you to walk 1 mile with him, go with him twain. And when the world feels like it's falling in on you and crashing in on you, at that moment announce and declare, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for this one more chance to demonstrate who I really am. And by the way, such a mental attitude is transformational. You can then be in this world, but not of it. Standing amidst the ruins all around you, and people will look at you and say, what is it you have? What is it you know that I don't appear to have or know? And then you can say, come here with me. Let me show you. And when enough people understand what you understand, embrace what you embrace, and demonstrate what you demonstrate, all the stuff that causes the world around us to fall apart begins to disappear, because it is no longer needed as a contextual field within which we can express and demonstrate who we really are. We begin to push it further and further away from us, even, in fact, ultimately off the entire planet as well. But a lot of people say, I've tried this, Neale. It hasn't worked. How much longer does this not having what I want have to go on? It will go on as long as you say that you do not want what you have. If you want what you have, you will ultimately have what you want. But if you say, I don't want what I have, then you are denying the very gift that makes it possible for you to have what you want. You are literally pushing away from you the circumstances, conditions, and situations that make it perfect for you to demonstrate and experience what it is you wish to have. Even if you had it, you wouldn't even know you had it. You wouldn't even know that it's part of your reality, because you are pushing away its opposite number. What you resist persists, and what you look at disappears. That is, it ceases to have its illusory form. Therefore, give that which you wish to receive, and share that which you think you have not enough of. And you will discover that part 2 of the process is absolutely true. Your life is perfect just the way it is right now. There's nothing going wrong. Everything has occurred exactly the way it needed to occur in order for you to express and experience who and what you are right here, right now. But as long as you make it wrong and say, Neale, you don't understand. Something terrible happened to me when I was 7. I'll never forget it, and you don't understand. To the degree that you make what's going on wrong, to that degree you'll make it very difficult to experience what life was designed for you to experience, who and what you really are.
Is there a way you can sort of take us through, what does it look like for a person to start doing this in their life? Like, what would start to happen and change as a result of beginning to live inside a consciousness that there is nothing wrong with their life and wanting what they have and turning towards life as opposed to away from it? Could you somehow model this for us?
Sure. I'll try. Let me use the example of the person perhaps who's in an abusive relationship. It could be an abusive marriage or an abusive relationship at work where the boss is just being unkind to you and verbally abusive every day, or in any other situation. It could be more serious or less serious than that. But a lot of us have been in those kinds of situations and circumstances, and regretfully, some people are really in a dangerous situation around that, where the person they're living with is actually physically abusive and could be endangering their health, or if not their very life. So let's talk about that just for a second. If you were to apply these principles, of course you would not sit there and say, bring it on, abuse me more, I'm just a doormat, walk all over me. No, of course you would not do that. But what you would do is you would discontinue imagining or thinking of what's occurring as somehow imperfect. You would in fact say to yourself, I see. This is occurring perfectly in my life right now, that I might announce and declare, express and fulfill, become and demonstrate who I really am. And part of who I really am is not only a person who forgives others when they have forgotten who they really are, but also one who loves the self. That I choose now to demonstrate my love of self, and this situation has been perfectly co-created by the lot of us to allow me to demonstrate my love of self. So now I can finally answer the question, what would love do now? Love for myself, and indeed love for the other. I know that these behaviors that you're demonstrating are not new to this particular experience of you and I. I get that. This is your deepest understanding of the only way to be and to survive in the world. I'm going to love you out of that. I'm not going to make you wrong for your behaviors because I understand them. I get that the sins of the father have been visited upon the sons, even unto the seventh generation. I get that you are deeply mired in the illusions of life that drive the engine of your experience. I get that. And so I don't even have to forgive you for the abuse that you have placed in the space of our experience. But I will tell you that I will no longer receive and accept that level of abuse from you. I will love myself enough to remove myself from the space of that abuse, and I will love you enough to tell you that you're demonstrating yourself in this particular way is not the highest and most glorious aspect of who you are. And in living in that way, when we give ourselves the strength and the courage to remove ourselves from situations such as that, we sometimes discover that the worst thing that ever happened to us turns out to be one of the best things that ever happened. I've talked to more people than you could ever imagine who have gone through experiences such as this, who have said to me, Neale, in some strange, convoluted way, the worst thing of my life turned out to be the best thing that ever happened.
I so get this. That's been my experience as well. The worst thing somehow turns out to be the best thing. And I'm really seeing even more clearly that by being in the experience of life inside the consciousness of there is nothing wrong, we now have full access to our power. I
think you've just hit it. You've really just hit it, because I think that the idea that there's nothing going wrong in my life was one of the biggest shifts and changes that could ever have occurred in my consciousness. I began to stop condemning the many things that looked like were going wrong in my life and to use them as tools in the creation and the recreation of who I really am.
Oh, God, that's so wonderful.
But you know what else it did? It removed from my consciousness resentment, anger, disappointment, frustration, and righteousness. And when those 5 elements are removed from one's consciousness, all the poison disappears. We can even look at our so-called enemy, at the one who did it to us, with kindness and love and caring and compassion. And that's the greatest healer of all.
so when you remove all of that, then what's left is kindness, compassion, love, care, power, clarity, right?
Right.
Yeah. So all those qualities of strength that give us access to a life that is easy and flows and where we can be living in the center of our own calling, our own destiny. Gee, Neale, I feel like I'm really getting this. This principle, I know you've spoken about it before, but I'm really getting this on a deeper level.
Let me tell you about the third secret of life, because for me, it's the most important, and I want to make sure we get to it before we run out of time. And the third secret of life is that you are not alone. You are not alone in this process that we call life. And what I observe in people that I've worked with individually is that they think they are alone, and that's what makes it intolerable. Almost any experience in life can be embraced and tolerated, if you please, if we imagine that we are at least in a shared space with another and that we have someone that we can talk to about it and get help from, and that we're not alone around all of that. Loneliness is one of the biggest emotional loneliness, even, and I don't mean just physical loneliness, because you can be in a relationship and still be emotionally alone, as people have discovered. You can be in a house full of people and be emotionally alone. But emotional loneliness is the biggest single problem facing humanity today. By the way, that's why the most severe punishment that any system can impose upon you in any penal institution is solitary confinement. They're very clear that being alone is the worst thing that people could have happen to them, being forced to be alone. Wow,
that is an amazingly profound insight.
For me, it was because I suddenly understood that look, let me back up and put it to you this way. We know at a cellular level that our basic nature is that we are not alone. That is, that we are all one, and therefore that we are never alone in the sense of everything else is part of us. We know that at a cellular level. That's why the impulse of all of life is to move toward life itself. You can't pass a flower without picking it up and wanting to put your nose into it. When I see lilacs bloom in the spring, I've got to go over there like Ferdinand the Bull and put my nose right in the middle of the lilacs. And I stand there and I smell them. I move toward all of life in that way. The impulse of life is to merge with other life, to experience that merging, in fact, is not even necessary, to experience that you are already merged. But when you don't know that, then you have an emergency. That is, you face a critical spiritual problem, a critical spiritual passage in your life when you are not clear of your basic nature. But the basic nature of life is, and the basic impulse is to express our oneness and the fact that we are not alone in the sense that everything else is in the same boat with us, that we're all together, if you please, that we are all one. Now, that's why when we have life experiences that run against that basic nature, we wonder what's going on. We said, why? I don't understand. Why is it like this? Why? And the feeling of aloneness or emotional loneliness is just about the worst feeling we can have, because it bumps up against and contradicts our very nature. Again, that which we know at a cellular level must be true. The antidote to that is twofold. One, to hold as truth that we are never alone. That God, well, first of all, that there is a God that exists. There is in fact a thing called God. Call it whatever you want, Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, Brahman, by whatever name and whatever label it suits you to refer to that ineffable essence that is the divine, as I mentioned earlier. So we notice that God exists. God is. And secondly, we notice that there's no place that God is not. That God is not here and not there, up there but not down here, but that God is everywhere. We notice that God is everywhere all the time, and that God will show up in your life in surprising ways and in unlimited numbers of forms. That is, that there's no limit to the forms that divinity will take to demonstrate itself to you if you are unable to demonstrate God's self as you, in you. And life will continue to inform life about life through the process of life itself. And God will continue to demonstrate God through the process of being God itself. For instance, this very program, this very seminar that people are taking right now may be one of those forms. Wouldn't it be interesting if that what's happening right now, if the fact that people are listening to this message right now is God's way of saying, could I be more obvious? Could I be more direct with you? Who do you think set this up this way? How do you think you happen to even find out about this particular seminar that you're now taking? How did you find yourself drawn to the information about where to call and when to call and how to sign up and how to become part of it? And what are you doing sitting here listening to this right now? If this isn't divinity demonstrating itself to you vividly, allowing you to know that you are not alone, then what is? So for me, the awareness that divinity is with me, part of me, in me, as me, and surrounds me, all around me, has allowed me to not feel alone. I can go to sleep at night and I have actual conversations. I sit down and say, hey, God, nice to have a quiet time with you. Glad you're here again. And God says to me, by the way, a wonderful statement in Conversations with God. You might recall this statement, I have sent you nothing but angels. This gets back to point number 2, when we want to make the other person the villain in our story. But not only the villain, but the heroes as well in our story are all aspects of divinity demonstrating itself to us. I have sent you nothing but angels has been an extraordinary insight and awareness that I have brought into my life. But the biggest insight and awareness is that God itself, in its highest and grandest form, is always with me and never apart from me, and that I can talk to and communicate and access and become aware of and receive assistance from that aspect of the overall ultimate reality at any time that I wish. Now, here's what happens. If we are conscious of the fact that God is always with us, God's revealing of itself to us will become more obvious to us. That is, you'll start seeing God's messages everywhere. Honestly, you'll be driving down the road. It'll be on the billboard, on the sign on the highway, or the chance utterance of a friend on the street, or the lyrics of the next song you hear on the radio, and you'll slap your forehead with the palm of your hand and go, oh my goodness, there it is again. Because the fastest way to experience that you are not alone in your life and that God is present always in your life is to be the source of that experience in the life of another. Someone else is looking for God. Someone else is looking for companionship, for help, for understanding in their life right now. Indeed, someone else is begging for it. But so long as you imagine your life is all about you, you've got to solve your problems first before you can solve it anywhere else, you will have missed the fundamental essence of this message and the primary purpose of life itself. However, if you decide that your job in the next 24 hours, to say nothing of the next 24 years, is to be the source of God's presence in the life of another, you will experience God's presence in your own life immediately and automatically. It cannot be any other way.
So, Neale, what happens then for a person when they begin to experience this sense of connection? How does their life change?
A level of peace, a level of, what they call it, a peace that passeth all understanding, truly does embrace you. You begin to deal with the challenging moments of your own life in an entirely different way. And you begin to find an inner serenity that you really, really did not know was possible. You can find that in meditation, in prayer, in other certain kinds of spiritual practices, and those are wonderful practices, but we're talking now about experiencing or about having those kinds of experiences in the everyday moments of your life. That all of life, in fact, turns out to be a meditation. All of life turns out to be a prayer. And we begin to experience that when we embrace the ever-present notion of God's eternal guidance, wisdom, understanding, clarity, and oneness, that God's eternal oneness with us. But the true reward comes in flipping the axis of our life. If God said something of prime importance to me in conversations with God, and she did, it was this. It was when she said to me, Neale, your life has nothing to do with you. I get that you think that it does, but in fact it doesn't. You're done. You're complete. Everything is over, finished. You don't have to evolve. You don't have to grow. Neale, your life has nothing to do with you. It has to do with everyone whose life you touch. And that doesn't mean be self-effacing and self-sacrificing and do nothing for yourself. Quite to the contrary. Everything you do, you will do for yourself because there's no one else to do it for. However, it means that how you act on your own behalf will be demonstrated in such a way that everyone whose life you touch will be given back to themselves. They will see by the light of your example who they really are. Therefore, in fact, step into the world, knowing that not only is God with you always, but that God is with everyone else as well through you. Dare you to say it. Dare you, double dare you. God has arrived in your life this minute because I am here. I am here with God's love. I am here with God's forgiveness. I am here with God's compassion. I am here with God's understanding. I am here with God's acceptance. I am here with God's awareness. I am here with the presence of divinity through me, as me, for you. Not because I want to show myself how wonderful I am, but because I choose to show you the truth of who you are, to give you back to yourself. God has arrived just now. Watch, listen, see, and don't deny. You see, the most fundamental aspect of divinity that we choose to express in us, through us, as us, is the fact that we need nothing. Suddenly, what occurs in our relationships with other people, both those who are intimately close to us as well as those who are on the outer circle of our acquaintanceships, our relationship with all other people has a whole new flavor and a whole new nuance to it. It's a flavor and a nuance that has nothing to do with need. It says essentially to others, there is nothing I need from you in order for me to be happy. You are free at last to be who you truly and really are, to demonstrate yourself as you wish. I need nothing from you, and I require nothing of you. And when people begin to feel that from us, that shift that takes place. By the way, this is how God interacts with us. This is what it means to be in the presence of God, to demonstrate the presence of God, and to experience the presence of God. When we experience the true presence of God, and I have experienced that, we experience being in the presence of some entity, being, or essence that requires, needs, and demands nothing from us, nothing whatsoever, but that accepts us just exactly the way we're showing up right here, right now. When we demonstrate that to others, to the degree that it's possible for us to do so, when we demonstrate that to others, they begin to feel suddenly uncommonly safe in the space of us. And when they feel uncommonly safe, they themselves become uncommonly safe with us. Suddenly, all the barriers drop. We become truly naked with each other. Not simply physically naked, but naked in every possible way. That is, fully present and completely visible in the truest essence of who we really are. People gravitate to that. That is that impulse I spoke of earlier, that people are naturally searching to experience and to complete that impulse of oneness. And they feel the safety of doing that, and they are magnetized to us. Since this has become the primary experience of my life and the expression of who I really am, I have discovered that people everywhere, this is hard to say, it's difficult to say in public, but honestly, people gravitate to me. I'm not in search of friends. I couldn't be lonely. You know what? I couldn't be lonely if I wanted to. It's impossible. See, because people want what you've got. And in fact, they already have it. They simply don't know it. So all God does is remind itself of itself by being itself. Did you hear that? I said all that God does is remind itself of itself by being itself. So you go around and remind all the other aspects of divinity of who they really are by demonstrating who you really are. Let your life so shine before men that they will see who you really are and see themselves in the light of your example. Or as someone put it once before, vividly, I have come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. That's why I am here. And so it turns out, after all, that life is not about get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the office in the corner, get the kids, get the grandkids, get the promotion, get the bigger house, get the bigger car, get the gray hair, get the retirement watch, get the sickness, and get the hell out. There's more going on in the process of life. In fact, all that I've just said has nothing to do with it. And yet all those wonderful things can be experienced by us, through us, as us. The things we want in our life: relationship, right livelihood, an experience of full expression, creativity, dynamism, wonderfulness, joy, family, all the things we yearn for will come to us without effort when we apply these 3 secrets.
God, I love that. And it even gives me chills because it feels so perfectly, well, just the way you're describing this feeling of suddenly being able to be completely comfortable in your own skin. And that's just something so critical to living a life that's consistently joyful.
Boy, is it ever. I'm telling you right now, people experience life as a challenge, a trial, a travail, like slogging through water that's waist deep, and it doesn't have to be that way, Ariel. I promise. It doesn't have to be that way.
Thank you, Neale. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible insights with us. So I know that many of you are wondering, how can you possibly take a deeper dive with Neale on these principles? So I'm going to take some time right now to give you the details about how you can continue working closely with Neale in his upcoming 7-week Conversations with God online course. And we're going to be adding some special bonuses, one of which is the opportunity to speak live, face-to-face with Neale, and receive wisdom from him firsthand. I'll get to that in just a moment, but be sure to keep listening. So if you're in front of the webcast page, I want to invite you to go just below the audio player. And under the play button, you'll see that it says, Visit the Conversations with God course information page. So just click on that link, or if you want to do it another way, you can go directly into your browser, open a new tab, and then type in conversationswithgodcourse.com. conversationswithgodcourse.com. And for those of you who aren't in front of your computer right now, don't worry. I'm going to give you everything you need, the entire overview of exactly how this is going to work, so you too can participate in the Conversations with God 7-week online course with Neale. So as you're scrolling down the page, you're going to see where Neale talks about his experiences and the course as a whole. So scroll down all the way until you see what you'll learn in the course. And then you're going to see that it says, Step 1, recognize what's missing in your life so you know what needs to change. And in Step 1, which is the first week of the course, Neale is going to guide you through the process of recognition so you can begin to finally clearly see what needs to change in your life. And it's by having this kind of clarity that you're going to be set up to make the changes that matter the most to you in the 7 weeks of the course. Course graduates describe the experience this way. They say that Step 1 is really their aha moment, the aha moment when they realized the difference between what they thought they wanted in life and what they really need in order to feel deeply happy and at peace. And you'll see that once you take the step, you'll feel freer to pursue the dreams you wouldn't have considered pursuing in the past, because you'll now have clarity around what you really, really need to make you happy. And you're going to feel more inspired and more creative about the short and long-term steps that you need to take in order to set your life back on track towards the happiness and fulfillment you so deserve. One more thing here. You're going to recognize that certain people in your life are either helpful or toxic to your well-being. And you'll begin to feel empowered to make the right decisions about your relationships.
Now, in step 2, explore the vision for your best life so that you can manifest what you really want. And in this step, you'll discover the true nature of God and exactly what it is that God expects, requires, and demands from every human being.
Oh, God, I can't wait for that one. And I also know that you're going to be covering why wanting something is the least beneficial thing you can do as you invoke the laws of the universe, and what to do instead to bring everything you need into your life. And I actually know the answer to this one.
Yeah.
And when you taught me that years ago, giving up wanting gave me everything I ever wanted.
You know what's fun? You said, oh, God, I can't wait to hear this one. And like you were talking right to God. I loved it the way you said that, because we all are, in fact, talking to God every day of our life. And a 4-step process is part of step 2, by the way, Ariel, a process that can resolve internal conflicts and external complications more quickly than anything you might have previously imagined was possible. It's kind of like an aspirin, like a spiritual or metaphysical aspirin for healing the headaches of life.
Okay, I'll take 2 bottles of that healing the headaches of life aspirin.
Step number 3 is to discover the system of the soul. Now, this is, I think, one of the most important things I could ever share with anybody. To discover that system so that you can understand exactly how to create the life that you want. In step 3, you'll discover how to quickly and easily change the thoughts and emotions that have been driving your previous experiences in life so that you're no longer at the mercy of what happens to you.
I know in step 3, you're also going to be sharing how to bridge the gap between the mind and the soul.
Yes.
And then teach us how to access your soul's wisdom.
I think it's the most important teaching that anyone could receive in life, how to access your soul's wisdom with a step-by-step process for creating your reality moment to moment, so that you'll always feel that the divine is working through you.
And then step 4, we have complete with the past so you can remove hidden blocks and enter a grander future. What will we get there?
How to be able to identify, that's what we're talking about here, without hesitation, without shame, and without guilt, how to identify any emotional incompletion or hurt in your life, including hurts that others may have imposed on you, as well as hurts that you may have inadvertently imposed on others. Now, in step number 5, we're talking about how to finish your unfinished business so that you can stop self-sabotage and finally release the past. This allows you to identify the agenda of your soul and also to identify the souls of every other person who's been involved in any really important event in your life. There's a process in the Course, Ariel, that allows us to get closer to, if not right inside of, the soul's agenda, the agenda of the other souls who have interacted with us in an important way. It's called the soul logic process. It's extremely powerful and allows us to at last understand why those interactions have been what they have been.
All right, so step number 6 is about affirm the deepest truths of who you are so you access your new life.
We're talking here about how to differentiate between what you're doing and what you're being. This allows you to end self-judgment and be free from self-criticism.
Does that mean we're going to get rid of the choir that's always telling us how bad and wrong we are?
Exactly, precisely. We're talking about secrets of creating inner peace and outer tranquility in the moment-to-moment of your everyday experience, so that you'll no longer be negatively affected by what happens to you, but instead you'll see meaning and divine purpose in everything that happens through you. This is about a dramatic shift in the way you experience life, Ariel, from what happens to you to what happens through you. And then in step 7, the final step of this course, we talk about reuniting with the divine so that you can create your reality anew every single day of your life. I'm going to say something unusual here now. We're talking about a unique process. This course contains a most unique, one-of-a-kind process by which anyone can have their own conversation with God whenever and as often as they wish. You know, the one thing I've been asked by people all over the world is, how can I have my own conversation with God? Can I even have my own conversation with God? And the answer, of course, is yes. And in this course, we offer a process that allows people to do exactly that. A unique process by which you may have your own conversation with God whenever and as often as you wish.
So let's just take a moment then to focus on how the course is structured and why it's set up the way that it is. So if you keep scrolling down on the web page, look for the section that says, here is what you'll receive. Okay, everybody see that? Here's what you'll receive. You'll see Neale and the team at Evolving Wisdom have set it up so that each week you get to dive deep into the material with Neale as your guide.
And my process offers you a chance to achieve the results you've been longing for, the results that you have been waiting for, hoping for all of your life, and to achieve those results faster than you ever thought was possible. What you're really getting is the most comprehensive and effective version of this program I've ever developed or ever taught. Let me tell you now, item by item, exactly what this course involves. First, 7 weekly audio lessons with my teachings and insights and guidance to help you absorb and integrate every step of this transformational process. Then we also offer 7 live weekly Q&A sessions with me. This is my favorite part of the course. Every week, I get on the telephone with you in conference call around the world with all participants in an interactive process that will allow you to dive more deeply into the material that I've covered in each of those weekly course sessions and to explore aspects of it that you might not have understood completely, that you might have questions about.
People just go crazy for that part, and I know how much you enjoy it.
It's my favorite part of the program, actually, Ariel, because I get to interact live with people from all over the world. Back and forth we talk about real problems, real issues, real questions, real concerns, and I have a chance to apply the material we're teaching to their everyday life experience. It's a powerful, powerful part of this course. Then we offer PDF transcripts that summarize each weekly course session, as well 7 PDFs containing specific practice and reflection questions. These are inquiries that I've written especially for the course to help you experience and to absorb the material from each session on a much deeper level. You'll also have access to our exclusive online community and talk about another powerful aspect of this course. This is a group of people from around the world who are taking the course with you, and you'll find additional connection and support with this group, as well as a chance to offer support to others in a safe and compassionate environment made up of your fellow students and previous course graduates. I'm telling you guys, by the time today's seminar is over, you'll have an idea of all the tools and strategies you'll need in order to bring these teachings into your life in a way that makes sense to you.
Now, in addition to these amazing course sessions with Neale, you're also going to receive exclusive bonus seminars with our world-renowned guest faculty teachers. And Neale has handpicked these experts as the very best resources to help support you through this process. These workshops were created to add an even deeper focus to certain areas of the course and to enhance your overall experience. So scroll down to the section titled Exclusive Guest Faculty Audio Seminars, and you'll be able to read all about the great bonuses. The first bonus audio seminar is one Neale did with my extraordinary sister, best-selling author and spiritual teacher Debbie Ford, and it's called Gain Freedom from Self-Sabotage.
This is an explanation, Ariel, of your shadow self. and how it can get in the way of your relationship with the divine and with each other for that matter, and how it can prevent happiness. This is about clearing the blocks around opening to the presence of the divine within you so that you can form a deep, loving relationship with your divine self and unleash your divine creative self so that you can then generate an abundance of passion, creativity, and joy in every single aspect of your life.
You know, and I've heard this bonus, and it's extraordinary. I mean, being able to bridge the divine and the shadow self is just amazing. In the second bonus audio seminar, Neale will be joined by spiritual teacher Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center, and it's called Visioning Your Life, How to Find Your Deepest Calling.
Yes, and in this marvelous bonus, we'll explore the power of visualization and how it works with your soul and how to make it work for you. The true source of powerful intentions as well will be explored, where intentions come from, how to access them, and why they work. And Michael and I will also discuss the 4 stages of consciousness and how to raise yours to the highest level.
And the third bonus seminar is Everyday Miracles, inviting the divine into your day-to-day life with best-selling author and spiritual teacher, Marianne Williamson.
And in this wonderful bonus session with Marianne, we talk about how to release anger and how to release negativity so that you can experience miracles every single day. We also explore how to transcend the destructive power of stress and how to allow the mind of spirit to be in charge of your life from now on. As well, how to truly embrace forgiveness for others and for yourself, giving you access to sources of unlimited love and compassion.
So, if you're not looking at the course information page yet, you can just click on the course link on the webcast page, or you can simply type into your browser conversationswithgodcourse.com and then scroll all the way down to the button where you can just select your payment option. And if you've ever done self-development work, you probably know that a weekly session with a coach or therapist can cost you as much as $400 or $500 a month.
You know what I'm proud of? I'm proud of, Ariel, that we're offering this program as a structure to not only allow people's life to change, but to develop at the deepest level. And also, and this is important to me, at a cost that makes it accessible as possible, as affordable as possible to as many people as possible. That's powerful, and that's important to me.
And it's, you know what, it's going to be important to a lot of people who've tuned in today as well, because getting you in this format, in this way, with this much depth, if they tried to actually get on a plane and go somewhere to see you, the plane ticket alone is more than that.
That's exactly right.
Now, I also want you to know that taking this step is completely without risk because you're going to have 14 days from the start of the course, that's 2 full weeks, to experience the Conversations with God course and feel the changes as it inspires and transforms your life. During this time, if you decide for any reason that the course isn't making your life better or it just isn't right for you, just let us know and we'll refund your money, no questions asked. And I just want to say one last time that if you're not already on the course information page, you can read all about this by typing into your browser conversationswithgodcourse.com. conversationswithgodcourse.com. So as I said, the investment for the program is only $397. So just go ahead, choose whichever payment option works best for you, and then click on the register button. And that takes you to the secure shopping cart where you can check out and enter all your details. So now it's time to move into the Q&A, and we're so excited to offer this to you tonight. Neale, so many of the people who are here with us have questions about joining you in the upcoming course. So for those of you that are listening online, you can enter your questions in the Q&A box on the event page, and we'll answer as many of them as we can. and as much time that we have, and we're also going to cover some frequently asked questions. So, Neale, you ready for the first question?
I sure am. Go ahead.
Okay. What kind of transformation can someone expect from taking the course?
Well, I think just about any kind of transformation, really, in the following way. I think that people can expect that their lives will become easier, a life of less strain, less struggle, less suffering, if I could put it that way, emotional suffering for sure, and I think they'll see their relationships, if they're in, really, even if they're not in a permanent relationship, they'll see their relationship experience, whether they're now in a permanent relationship or whether they're contemplating such a relationship, or even if they're just leaving such a relationship and preparing for a new phase in their life. Their relationship experience, my life has shown me, can be dramatically altered, actually relatively quickly. And finally, I think that the change I've seen in my life, and that people have seen in theirs as well, is a change in their financial experience. That is, most people find that the flow of income begins to loosen up and become not nearly as connected to what we feel we have to do, must do, and sometimes imagine ourselves that we are required to do, even if we don't like doing it, in order to produce sufficient income to survive and to enjoy the kind of life that we want to see. So we're talking really about, in a sense, a greater sense of financial abundance and security, relationships that go much more smoothly, and have much more of a ground of being in a spiritual place, and in general, a life of greater ease and a life of greater, how would I put this, a greater comfort, in the sense that we suddenly understand what we're really doing here, why we're here on the earth to begin with, and how we can remove ourselves from the illusion that there are things that we must do, have to do, are required to do in order to live a happy, satisfied, and spiritually fulfilling life. I want to end my description with that. It's about becoming spiritually fulfilled, Ariel. It's about understanding the true reason and the true purpose for our existence on earth.
You know, you just said everything that almost everybody I know would want, you know, spiritual fulfillment, being on purpose, better relationships, more income, more security, more abundance, less suffering. That's just amazing. So, you know, now that you've been teaching this for decades to people all over the world, how would you say that this course is different from other approaches?
I think, well, there are many. I don't want to make any other approaches, you know, inappropriate or wrong or somehow less than. But I think that the difference would be that what I am sharing with people comes from a very deep. I don't. It's hard for me to say this because I don't want to sound like I imagine this to be somehow greater or better than somebody else's program. But what I'm coming from 3,000 pages of Conversations with God dialogue. What I share with people in the programs that I present is what was shared with me in those 3,000 pages. And while all truth is truth no matter what the source, there are different ways to articulate and different ways to emphasize and focus on certain aspects of how we can improve our lives and change our very experience, our day-to-day experience of being on the earth. So I guess what makes it different is the source material from which my program and my messages and my courses arise. And that is, all of it arises from the 3,000 pages of the Conversations with God dialogue. So I would say to anybody, if you've heard about the Conversations with God books, and if you've read one or more of those books, I think you'll become clear that there's nothing brand new there, nothing that hasn't been said before, but there is a way that it has become, that the information there has been rendered accessible, easy to understand, easy to access, easy to apply in a person's life. And I think that's what makes it perhaps different from some other courses, in that it arises from a deeply spiritual foundation, from a spiritual context. It's not simply a practical course that talks about the practicalities of increasing one's income and improving one's relationships, but the spiritual ground of being that produces those outcomes almost automatically.
And I would say one of the other benefits is that we get you, and we not only do we get what came through you, we get you sharing how it impacted your life, which is just so incredibly special. There's a question here from Nahid who's asking, in the Course, will I learn how to have my own conversation with God?
Yes, the answer is yes. I would never bring a course such as this to the world without offering that opportunity. There's no guarantee, of course, naturally. I'm very, very careful to make it clear that I do not guarantee that every single person taking the course will experience their own conversation with God. But let me make this point, if I can, around that, please. Everyone is having a conversation with God all the time. That point is made on page 5 of the 3,000-page dialogue. On page 5 of 3,000 pages, it says very clearly, I'm talking to everyone all the time. The question is not to whom am I talking. The question is who's listening. So what I have devised is a process that has worked for me and has worked for now thousands of other people, because I've shared it with people in workshops, in trainings, in programs around the world that I have done live around the world. This is the first time I've done it actually online, but I've done it live from Bonn in Germany to Tokyo and all over. Just came back, in fact, from China, from 2 weeks in China, where I talked to thousands of people there in 4 different cities during a tour. But this is, now we're bringing this to the world in a different way through the program at Evolving Wisdom that places it online. So the short form answer to your question, my friend, is yes. We will share with you a process through which many, many, many people have, in fact, experienced their own conversation with God. We want to make it very clear to you that this opportunity to have a conversation with God is open to every single person on the face of the earth. And are there some ways that make it easier than other ways? Yes, there are, and we'll share some of those with you.
Now, we had a whole bunch of people ask this next question. It's quite popular. Dory from Thousand Oaks, Jean from Dearborn, Michigan, Virginia from Honolulu, Janet from New York, Claire from Medford, Lloyd from Albuquerque. They all want to know, in this course, will I learn how to know that it's not just my imagination or my ego, but it really, truly is God speaking to me? And what does that connection feel like, and how will I know it's working?
I can't tell you what the connection feels like in specific terms, my friends, because it feels differently to everybody. It's like asking, what does love feel like? It's like asking, what does an apricot taste like? I mean, it's different to everybody. So I can't be specific and say, well, what it feels like is A, B, C, D, E. But I can tell you that you will know the feeling when you experience it, just like you knew, if you've had that experience, the first time you fell in love, just like you knew anything that you deeply know that's really very, very, very important to you. For some, it's just an overall feeling, and I hate to sound trite and hackneyed, but I'm going to say it. It's an overall feeling of deep bliss, just a sense of blissfulness. And it may not stay with you for the rest of your days on the earth and for every hour between now and the time you leave our planet, but it will be present for you in many of those moments, and you will say, that's what it feels like to experience an in-the-moment, live, here and now connection with the divine. For others, it'll be a feeling of excitement. For others, it'll be a different kind of a feeling. I came to tears in my own experience, not obviously sorrowful tears, but tears of joy and tears of recognition. Oh, yes. You know what it felt like to me? What it felt like to me is having been away. Have you ever been away for a long time, weeks or months or even a couple of years or more, and then returned home? I had that experience in my life when I was away from my home of origin, my origin family, for 4 or 5 years as life's path took me. And then I returned home one Christmas after being away almost 5 years. And I remember how I felt when I walked through the door. Excuse me, when I recall how I felt when I walked through the door of my home, my family home. Everything was as it always had been. It was as if I had never left. And my mom was in the kitchen, my dad was in the living room, and I kind of snuck in. I didn't want them to know I was coming, so I just snuck in very quickly, and there they were. And that feeling for me was what it felt like when I had my first conversation with God. Oh, I'm home again. I wish I could say to you that there's a one-size-fits-all answer to your question. I can't, but I can tell you this. You're going to know it when you experience it. You're going to be very, very clear about that. There's no question in my mind about that.
That's something to really look forward to. Sophia from Sunnyvale is asking, I've studied so many things so often without really making lasting changes in my life. How can I finally be happy?
Wow, the Course answers that question. You can finally be happy in 100 different ways, but first deciding what it is you're doing here. See, one of the reasons why many people are not happy on Earth is they don't know why they're here. And so could I put it this way without being offensive? And I can say this because I experienced it in my life, so I'm really, really calling myself out on this. For 50 years, I had no idea what I was doing here. That is, I didn't know what the objective of physical life on Earth really was. So I was out there playing the game that society taught me to play. Get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the better car, get the better job, get the better house, get the spouse, get the kids, get the grandkids, et cetera, until I got to the end of the line, and then maybe, at the age of 75 or 80, finally get the gray hair, get the retirement watch, presumably before that, and then, and then get out. But that's not what life is about. And I didn't learn that until I was well into my 50s, and then I began to realize, my priorities are completely skewed and wrong. They're just in the wrong way. They're twisted in the wrong way. I wrote a book called The Only Thing That Matters, and the first sentence of that book, my friend, says this: 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. How can you be happy? I'm not going to take a course like we're talking about here and try to reduce it down to 30 seconds in an answer for you, but I can give you a broad brush stroke response. Change your life priorities. Decide to approach your whole reason for being on the earth in an entirely different way. And the Course teaches you what that way is and shares with you how you can get from where you are to where you want to be.
There's a couple of quick questions here I'm going to answer, Neale, and maybe you can grab a glass of water because you've been talking a lot tonight. So one of the questions is, if I miss the Course sessions live, will I get the same benefit if I listen to the recordings? And yes, absolutely yes. What we've discovered here at Evolving Wisdom is that only 50% of the participants really ever show up live. The other 50% listen at a time that suits their schedule, and there's no difference in the results that you'll get from the program. So don't let your schedule or your time zone stop you from going through this very, very powerful training. So, Neale, we've got Nagy from Canada who's asking, is it possible to change my life being married to my wife of 43 years who was always negative and unforgiving?
The answer is yes, and it has nothing to do with your wife. The answer is yes, and it will occur, or at least can occur, when you do just as I talked about a moment ago. Begin to change your priorities, understand what you're doing here. Why are you on the earth? Who are you anyway? How can you activate that more fully and more frequently in your life? And you will be surprised at the shifts and changes that can take place, even inside of a relationship, or perhaps a work relationship at a place of employment that you're not enjoying, or in a long-term marriage that it requires you to be in constant contact with a person who may have a great deal of negative energy, more often than not. And you know what's surprising about this? I don't want to promise this. This is not an outright promise, but this is an observation I've made, having worked with hundreds and hundreds of people over the past 10 years on questions very similar to yours. How can I turn, that which is not now as wonderful as I would like it to be into something that's more wonderful? Here's what happens. When we change ourselves, when we shift our own priorities, our own understandings, our own activities, our own experience, our own energy projections, all of a sudden, people around us often pick up on that new energy and begin to shift their own energy as well. This is not an outright promise, but I wouldn't be surprised in the least if it's one of the things that happen. So don't be too surprised if after you move through a course such as this and begin to adopt and embrace many of the exercises, the programs, the suggestions that we make here in this course, that all of a sudden the person across the room starts to express themselves in their life a little bit differently as well. These things happen because energy is energy. And by the way, let me close that remark by answer to that question with this. My friend, when you understand that life is energy-based and that energy is a process that affects itself, that is, it's circular, and it affects everything within its energy field, it's impossible to make the kind of major changes we're talking about in this course inside of a relationship without having any impact at all on the relationship and the other people in it. Such a thing would be utterly impossible. It simply can't happen. Even as your wife's negative energy affects you now, you've just announced, by the way, you are living proof of that because you've just told me that. So even as your wife's negative energy affects you now, so too will your change of energy affect her then.
So, Neale, it's safe to say that, Nagy has a difficult wife, but all of us that are humans on the planet have somebody difficult in our lives somewhere, whether it's a sibling or a boss or a neighbor. We've all got some toxic person or many to deal with. So are you saying that being in this course will help transform all of these relationships?
It will certainly affect them. I don't know if I can go as far as say that it'll transform them utterly, but it will change two things. It will certainly affect those relationships and at least the way those people interact with you. They may not change, such that their entire experience of life with everybody else changes, but very often it will affect the way they interact with you. And the second thing that's even more important is it will change how you respond to the way they act, however they act. And that's the major shift. And the miracle of that is that when you change how you respond to however they act, they see that change. They see that shift in how you're responding, and that's circular. And suddenly they start interacting with you in an entirely different way. That's been my direct on-the-ground experience.
That is just completely invaluable. We can change the way we're responding to that. So Karen from the Netherlands is asking, Dear Neale, how can I silence the critical voice? Deep down I have the confidence, although the circumstances are really difficult. This worrying critical voice blocks my functioning and my creativity.
My advice to you would be to embrace your critical voice. See, what you resist persists. Conversations with God made that very clear to me in Book 1, and boy, did that change my life. So I stopped trying to stop those experiences. All those things that used to get in, that I thought were getting in my way, I made them my friends. So when I heard my critical voice come up to me, for instance, and say, "Oh, Neale, you know you're not going to be able to do this in the time frame that you promised, and you way overpromised in terms of results as well, and you do that all the time, and yada yada yada, blah blah blah." That whole negative voice that many of us hear. Instead of saying, instead of feeling bad about it or agreeing with it. Instead of doing either one of those two things, I did a third thing. I thanked it. I'm going to give you a one-word tool that can change your life overnight. And the word is gratitude. When I stepped into the place of gratitude, when I heard that critical voice, and when I said, and I actually had inner dialogue with that critical voice. This may sound silly, but it works. I had an actual inner dialogue, and I said to that critical voice, you know what? I know you mean the best for me. You're not here trying to make my life miserable. You're looking out for me. I don't necessarily agree with the conclusions that you always come to, but I absolutely agree with your decision to bring to me and to my consideration everything you think I need to know, everything you think I should consider in order to move forward with the decisions and the choices that I'm about to make. Thank you for that. Thank you for those ideas and those thoughts of yours. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to always welcome whatever it is you have to show me, and I'm going to accept that which I agree with, and I'm going to reject that which I don't agree with. And you know what? I'm going to start moving forward with my appreciation for your advice and for your insight. And suddenly that niggling, nagging voice starts to bother us a lot less. But more importantly, we begin to experience ourselves as being totally in control because of what choices we make with regard to the advice that we are getting, and even the criticisms that we're hearing from that critical voice. So you know what? I don't resist that anymore. I just accept that as part of my mind's job. My mind has been assigned. It's my little poem. My mind has been assigned to make sure that I survive, and it's telling me what it thinks I need to know to survive. But here's what I say to my mind, by the way, to end this answer. I say to my mind one thing: oh, I get it. I get it. You think that my primary focus and my primary purpose in life is survival. Not just survival in life to continue living long, but survival through this moment, survival through this particular challenge, survival through this particular decision I have to make. You think I'm concerned with survival. Well, I understand why you would give me that advice then, but guess what? My primary focus is no longer survival. My primary focus is the creation and the recreation of who I really am in the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever I held about that. That's my primary focus, and guess what, friends? I'm not afraid of failure. And when I drop my fear of failure, and when I drop my idea that even failure exists, when I embrace the notion from Conversations with God that there's no such thing as failure, my critical voice looked at me and said, well, if that's how you're going to be. And it began to stop being so critical of me. And I began to notice that it was no longer the driving force that made me shrink from major choices and decisions in my life. So my advice to you, stop opposing what your critical voice has to say. Welcome it, thank it, explore it, and then reject what you no longer think or believe serves you.
You know, when my voice comes up, Neale, I always say, okay, thank you for sharing. You're wrong. Here's how you're wrong, and, you know, go off and play now.
Yeah, and sometimes, and not to, yes, and so I do that too. And sometimes I say, you know what, you could be right. You know what, you could be right. But let's find out. Let's have some fun and find out. I'm not going to shrink back because I think that you're right. You could be right and you could be wrong, but you could be. It's a 50-50 chance. You could also be as right and you could also be as wrong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play. We came to this earth to experience the grandest notion of who we really are. And the grandest notion of me is that I refuse to sit on the sidelines and not even put on the jersey for fear that I might get tackled at the 30-yard line. You know what? I'm putting on the jersey, I'm getting out on the field, and I'm going to play. Play well. God said to me in Conversations with God in one of the most delightful exchanges we ever had, Neale, play well.
Love that. So for those of you that are listening online and you've got a question for Neale, type it in the Q&A box on the event page and send it on in because we're going to answer as many as we can. Marguerite from New York is saying, I'm really busy between taking care of my son and job hunting, so I'm wondering what is the time commitment? How much time do I need to put in to get the most out of this course? And should I take it if I feel busy?
Yes, especially if you feel busy. Because you want to look at what are you busy at. And I get it. I hear you that the things you're busy at right now are very important to you. But you know what? What I learned years ago, even before Conversations with God, if you want to get something done, go to a busy person. So I want to say to you that the level of your busyness should not impact upon, and it certainly shouldn't impinge upon your ability to step into that which can improve or immeasurably change your life for the better. So my answer to you is, now as to how much time it will take as much time as you want to give it. I wish I could say, it's going to take 14 hours, 30 minutes, and 17 seconds. But I can't say that because, once again, there's no one-size-fits-all answer to your question. But it will take as much time as you want to give it. But here's what's interesting, what we notice about people taking the course. Even those who feel they're too busy to take it, some of them have signed up just to see what it's all about, and they find the time. And they give it more time than they ever thought they would. And another aspect that we find, that some people, in fact, need less time than they thought they would need because their level of enthusiasm and the level of energy with which they approach the course assignments and the course experiments and the course activities, their level of enthusiasm makes them sometimes whiz right through it. And they call us and they tell us, you know what, this took a lot less time than I thought it would. And things are changing in my life virtually overnight. So I want to just say to you, it'll take as much time as you think it will take. But if you're a busy person, that's the very reason you want to take the course, because you want to make sure that your busyness produces the outcomes in the long run in your life for which you have yearned for these many years. Not only for which you have yearned, but which you have earned.
We have a question from Hermie from Namibia. and says, I work hard but still struggle financially. I am in God's service. Will this course help me create a breakthrough in this area of my life?
It very well may. No guarantees. I'm not going to sit here and say absolutely, but it very well may. But the larger breakthrough will be this. The larger breakthrough of this course may be for you that whether or not it changes your financial circumstance, it may very well change the level of happiness, joy, peace, serenity, and liveliness that you experience in your life. That is, your entire experience of life. Whatever your income could very well drastically and dramatically change such that, whether you believe it or not, the level of your income may wind up making virtually no difference at all. And there's an irony behind that, because when the pressure is off, not because your income has changed, but because your attitude about your income has changed, when the pressure is off, suddenly our income does often automatically increase tremendously because we've stopped looking at it as walking across the living room with a tray full of wine glasses, 17 glasses that everyone is saying, don't spill it, don't spill it, don't spill it. And of course you do, because the pressure's on to get across the room without spilling a drop of that wine. Well, when the pressure is off, even though it's a very real circumstance, not making light of it, a very real circumstance, I have some financial pressures. But when we decide to take the pressure off, all of a sudden, our creativity and the energies surrounding the way income comes to us is released. And very often, very frequently, what happens is our income does increase. And I want to say, this is a dangerous word to say, but I'm going to use it anyway. Often our income increases effortlessly. That is, things happen in our life. We're offered opportunities. Things happen in our life that we don't know. We didn't deliberately try to make them happen. Things just fall into our lap. That's been my experience. Stuff has fallen into my lap I wouldn't have dreamt of 15 years ago, just out of the blue. But that's not a guarantee. Be real clear what I'm saying here. That's not a guarantee, but it is my observation of how very often it works. So I want to say to you that when you move through this course, you will learn how to shift the way you are experiencing insufficient financial resources. And that shift will change, or very likely could change, the level of resources itself.
And, I first learned that from you years ago about just knowing that money will fall into my lap. And every week when I write up my accomplishments for the week, and I write them as if they've already happened, I always write down an X amount of dollars just fell into my lap. And almost consistently from unexpected places, it happens. So I can testify this stuff really works. Kinneret from Israel is saying, hello, Neale. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. It means a lot for me. What is the connection between psychological therapy and the spiritual journey? And how can I know if I need to go to therapy or can heal myself in some way?
I wouldn't advise you not to go to therapy if you felt that there was some therapeutic insight or therapeutic assistance that would be of value or benefit to you. But I can't answer the question, what's the difference? The difference is that standard therapeutic models do not generally, and rarely do they consider, spiritual realities, and much less use spiritual insights in order to alter or affect or help a person change one's behaviors or responses in life. So the difference is the basis, the ground of being, the data, if you please, from which one comes when one is approaching the solution of one's life problems from a spiritual point of view. There's a marvelous description of all of this in a book called When Everything Changes, Change Everything, which talks about the mechanics of the mind and the system of the soul. By the way, but the point that book makes, by the way, is not to abandon one for the other. It makes it very clear that life is a question of balance. So I wouldn't suggest abandoning any kind of therapeutic intervention or therapeutic model that you think might in fact be of some benefit to you. But I would say do not do it exclusively to the elimination of any kind of spiritual insight or spiritual perspective that you might take. And likewise, do not take just a spiritual perspective and a spiritual point of view and eliminate from your considerations any kind of standard therapeutic intervention that might be worthwhile. Use both. There's no reason why you can't. There's zero reason why you can't. But the difference between the two is very simple. Standard therapeutic intervention comes from the limited data of the mind. Spiritual intervention, overlaying a spiritual model and embracing a spiritual perspective as one views one's life challenges, embraces a database that is eternal and unlimited. And what that's done for me in my life, my friend, is it's caused me to consider my life challenges and my life problems in an entirely different context, in an eternal context rather than a here and now context. And that has shifted dramatically some of the choices and decisions that I've made in my life and the way I view and respond to life's events as well. And that's where real behavioral change occurs, when we shift our reaction and our response to life's many events. And what causes that shift and that response to take place is a change in perspective. Remember that perspective creates perception. Perception creates your belief about a thing. Your belief about a thing creates your behavior, and your behavior creates your experience. When you shift your perspective and broaden it to include the perspective of the soul, all the other dominoes fall, and your perception changes, your beliefs change, your behaviors change, and your experience changes. That's the model you'll find in that book. When everything changes, change everything.
Okay, here's another question for you. It came in anonymously. It says, Neale, I don't feel like I'm living my purpose. Will this course help me?
I hope that it will. The answer is that it should, if you follow the recommendations and listen carefully to what the Course is sharing with you. But you know what, my friend, your life purpose is not something, how can I put this? Life purpose is not necessarily something you're doing, but your doingness in life, the things you do in the days and times of your life, are best beneficial, are the most beneficial, when they are reflections of a choice in what I'm going to call beingness that you have made. And that's one of the main points that the Course will bring you. It will assist you in shifting the priority focus of your life from what am I doing, what am I doing, what am I doing, what is my purpose, what is my purpose, what is my purpose, to what am I being, what am I being, what am I being, in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience of my life, in the expression of my highest self. And when I am being that fully, what purpose arises in my life automatically? Life is not a process of discovery. Life is a process of creation. So when someone asks me, how can I discover what my life purpose is, I tell them you can't. You can't discover your life purpose, but you can create it. And you can create it automatically out of your state of being. So, and I know that's a lot to throw at you here in a 30-second answer, but when you engage yourself in the process that this course will involve you in, you will have a much deeper explanation of what I'm saying here and be able to apply this articulation to your everyday life.
Thank you. Mary Ellen from Berkeley is asking, when someone is chronically ill without easy medical answers, how do you interpret life as perfect in those circumstances?
By understanding what the reason for the medical condition is. And by the way, this is an important thing I'm going to say to you right now. The reason does not exist ipso facto. That is, the reason that the medical condition exists does not exist out there somewhere in the universe and you simply uncover it or discover it or somebody whispers in your ear. The reason that anything occurs is the reason we give it. That's one of the most empowering things that God ever said to me in my conversations with God. I want you to listen very carefully to what I just said to you. There is no reason for anything, your medical condition or anything else on the planet, that exists out there in the universe, that we just have to, if we turn over enough rocks or look behind enough trees, we'll discover the reason. What God said to me is, stop looking for the reason for anything, whether it's your medical condition or anything else, and start giving it a reason. So if you were clear about what I just said, you would then sit down with your highest self and you would say, okay, if I could give this medical condition a reason, what would it be? And you would be surprised, sometimes shocked, at the answer that your higher self will give you. And that answer very often not only allows us to embrace the medical condition and to endure it with much greater equanimity and much less suffering. By the way, pain and suffering are not the same thing. The pain may not be different, may not be less, but the suffering could be a great deal less. But it could not only cause you to experience your medical condition with a great deal less suffering, a great deal less angst, and a great deal more equanimity. But furthermore, that shift of energy, here we go again, might actually begin to positively affect the medical condition such that its negative impact on your life is reduced gradually day to day. I speak again here from experience. I wouldn't dare say something like that to you, except I want you to know that I have a chronic medical condition, which years ago was not fun. I mean, I don't need to get into it, but I can promise you it was not fun. That is, it caused me not a little bit of pain, and not just once in a while, but chronic pain. But when I used the process that I'm sharing with you now and gave it a reason and welcomed it into my life based on the reason that I gave it, then the suffering that I experienced from the pain that I was enduring was reduced dramatically. And that shifted my energetic ground of being such that the conditions themselves have reduced remarkably through the years. I'm feeling better now at 72 than I was at 56, and that is the truth of it. And everyone who knows me tells me that you even look better than you did when you were 60, and it's true. I can't listen. I want to make real clear here. I don't want you to think for 1 minute that I'm promising you anything. No promises, no guarantees. I can only come from my own personal experience. But I can tell you this: stop looking for a reason for your medical condition and start giving it one. And when you give it one, you will come up with the most extraordinary insight from the highest place within you that could shift the context within which you hold your medical experience and change how you move through life with regard to it.
Neale, can I just ask you, I'm just going to make something up here. So for instance, let's say you have, a chronic debilitating thing, let's say like Lyme disease. What is a potential thing reason you could make up for having it? That's
a different answer for everyone. Let's just use mine. Let's just use my. If you want to get specific, let's just use a real life example. I have peripheral polyneuropathy. It's a great big long bunch of syllables. That means I can't feel anything from my knees on down to my toe tips. That I gradually through the years began to lose feeling, first in my toes, then in the rest of my foot, then in my ankle, then in my shins, then right straight up to my knees, and going up higher every day, every year, gradually until I begin to lose feeling everywhere in my body. So that's not a fun thing, but the bad part about it was not only did I lose feeling, but the pain of it was the random nerve firings that accompany this condition. That when you lose feeling, what happens why you're losing feeling is that your nerves are firing for one last time and then they're dying out. I'm being very simplistic here. This is not a medical explanation, but how the doctors explained it to me in just layman's terms. In layman's terms, well, the result of that was that whenever I lost feeling and in one more nerve, it fired, and it was like somebody was jabbing me with a penknife. That's been my experience for the past 15 years. One nerve in my leg at a time. Now, I can tell you that made going through the day a very interesting experience. It made trying to fall asleep at night a very interesting experience. Until I decided, you know what? Because you got to know that for the first 5 years of this, I was running around asking God, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why do I have to do this? I'm still a relatively young person. If I was 95 or 104, fair enough, but come on, I'm not even 60. Why is this happening to me? Why? And God said, indeed, why is it? I said, no, you don't understand. I'm asking you. She said, no, I'm asking you. You need to give it an answer. You need to give it a reason. I'm not going to give it a reason, because you created it to begin with. That's another whole story. But why is this happening to you? And God challenged me to give it a reason. And I gave it a bunch of reasons. Number one, so that I might know who I really am, that I'm larger than that is not who I am, that I am not my body, and I will not succumb to imagining that I can't be happy, joyful, carefree, wonderful, serve the world, serve others, and experience a joyous life, even if it's the last minute I have on earth, because of this particular pain and this particular condition. So it's happening to me as an opportunity because I have wanted at the soul level to test the reality of who I really am. And I created a contextual field within which I can do that. Number two, I decide that I'm having this experience so that I could better relate and more closely understand the pain and the suffering and the challenges faced by other people, because I never really felt into that. I could be around people who had chronic conditions, and I really didn't quite, how do I put it, get it. I just didn't get it. I couldn't really relate to them in a way that could allow me to give them insight and advice and spiritual counsel and spiritual comfort and succor and be there for them in a personal and very real, meaningful way. This has increased my compassion ratio by 1,000%. Those are two. I could give you 10,000 more reasons as well. Those are the first two reasons that I came up with. And when I decided that that was the reason that I was given this condition, I not only welcomed the condition, but it changed for me because I no longer opposed it. I said, okay, now I see why this is happening. And I was able to move into that. Here's that magic word again. Believe it or not, gratitude. Thank you, God, for peripheral polyneuropathy, or I never would have been able to sit down with this person who I'm counseling right now across the room from me, who is having some physical conditions of their own, and really relate and understand. And by the way, you don't have to be a counselor or a spiritual messenger to use that particular reason. Just a person moving through life. Thank you, God, for this condition called peripheral polyneuropathy that allowed me to get in touch with who I really am, to separate myself from the ancient thought that I carried since I was 5, that I am my body. Thank you for allowing me to notice now that I'm larger even than that through this particular experience, which I probably wouldn't have understood if I didn't have this particular encounter. And thank you, God, for allowing me to notice as well how lucky I am in my life, the wonderful glories and the good things of my life, in contrast that this contextual field has allowed me to experience. And there are many, many other reasons as well that I've been able to give that have allowed me to, I want to say, spiritually rationalize the physical condition that I have noticed is occurring in my life. And by stopping my opposition to it and embracing it with gratitude, the very shift of my ground of being with regard to it has slowed the process itself of the physical degeneration of the nerves in my body. The doctors have said to me, wow, what's going on? This thing has slowed down tremendously. I said, well, you know what? There's a little miracle in the air. It knows it can't get to me anymore, so it's decided to shift the energy. But I can tell you this, that's a real-world practical example. There's a reason that everything is happening to us, whether it's a medical condition, the breakup of a relationship, the loss of a job, whatever it might be that we don't think is the most wonderful experience of our life. When we give it a reason, when we assign it a purpose, we suddenly begin living into that assignment, and it shifts our ground of being with regard to the whole reality. This is called transformation. People's lives have been changed with this kind of information.
Thank you for being willing to be so vulnerable and transparent and share your personal story with us. I know I just had a real shift in thinking around this with one of my chronic things, so I really appreciate that, Neale. Rick from Christchurch is asking, Neale, will this course give me insight to understand why bad things happen to good people?
We're just talking about that. Isn't that funny? I hope so, because you will decide why so-called bad things happen to good people. And you will begin to realize that what Conversations with God said in Book 1, See the Perfection, that everything is perfect in its own way, designed to create a contextual field that allows us to more accurately and more magnificently decide and declare, express and fulfill, become and experience who we really are. And I don't want to be irreverent here, and I don't want to be religiously inappropriate, but may I use an example that occurs to me in my life? Sure. A man named Jesus, of whom most of us are aware, moved through some very difficult and challenging experiences in his physical encounter with life. The key theological question of the millennia, really of all time, would be this with regard to that particular person's experience. Did those things happen to him or through him? That not just his crucifixion, but the other experiences he had in his life as well, was that happening to him, or was that happening through him? If we say, well, no, it wasn't happening to him, Jesus wasn't the victim of those situations, he obviously created or co-created with God those experiences. If that's our religious, our theological point of view, we needs must ask the next key question: why? Why in the world would Jesus actually deliberately, working in concert with the God of his understanding, create those kinds of horrific physical experiences? Why would he do that? And the answer becomes clear. So that he might know who he really is, and through the demonstration of it, cause all of us to know who we really are as well. Wow. Wow. What if I just decided that the same was true about my particular physical condition, about my particular, forgive me for using the word, about my particular crucifixion in life? What if I decided that the same reason holds true for every single human being on the earth? What if we're all here to create a contextual field within which we can experience who we really are and demonstrate it so magnificently that someone else's suffering is reduced, if not eliminated altogether? Wouldn't that make it worth it? Well, my friend, it sure has for me.
Love that. Got another question here, but I actually know the answer to this one. Cindy from Columbus is asking, I might be working and I don't know what my schedule is. Will there be an audio version of the course that I can listen to? Yes, Cindy, all the recordings will be available and you can listen in at any time that suits you. And one of the things I want to mention here, one of the things I so love about the course that you offer, Neale, is all the live sessions that you do to mentor the participants. I know that it's one of your favorite things to do, that you really love going deep and close and intimate with them and answering questions. And what I want the listeners to know is that this is just such a really special, incredible opportunity that you get on a near weekly basis to be guided personally by Neale and to receive his wisdom and his guidance and his advice. So I really want you to pay close attention to that very important part of the course. And I want to encourage everyone who's now feeling called to join Neale and the global community of kindred souls on this journey to go ahead and register tonight, because if you register tonight, you're going to receive Neale's special ebook, Dissolving the Illusion of Lack, and you'll get that tonight right away, so you can get started moving into more connection, more ease, and more flow in your life. Plus, by registering tonight, you'll also be part of an intimate group who will have the opportunity to meet Neale and personally connect during a live online video gathering to unlock your divine wisdom. At this really exclusive special gathering, you'll be joining the others in the Conversations with God community with Neale, and you'll have the opportunity to connect directly with everyone that's going to be taking the course together. Neale will be guiding you and the rest of the group through a special exercise to help you reconnect with your divine wisdom in a very, very powerful and direct way. And Neale, I know how much you love talking to people and answering their questions live and connecting with them personally. Can you speak for just a moment about the power of these video gatherings?
Well, I think that what it does is it makes it real. That is, it makes all that we're talking about here real. It makes the opportunity real. It moves it from wishful thinking and hopefulness to a level of reality that we might not have thought about before, in terms of not only our ability to create and recreate ourselves anew in a grander and more wonderful version in our life, but in fact in terms of our ability to connect in a here and now way with that aspect of the universe, that aspect of the cosmos that I call God, and to use that connection as a practical tool, not just simply an esoteric experience. It's wonderful, it is that, but also as a practical tool to connect us with the highest source of wisdom and clarity that exists within every one of us, and to use it as a practical way as we move through the days and times of our 9-to-5 experience. So I think that the power of it is that it offers us opportunities that don't often come along in life. I mean, Listen, well, the only sadness of my life, excuse me, the greatest sadness of my life is that I had to wait until I was 53 years old till I even began to grasp a little bit of this. And now I'm 72, and I've lived with the experience that conversation with God has given me for almost 20 years. I'll be 73 in a few weeks, and that'll be my 20th year of living with this information. But I can, oh gosh, this is hard for me to say. I don't want to overpromise, but I want to say this. This I can say to you calmly and with confidence. It shouldn't take you the 20 years it took me to get to the place that I find myself today, where I feel so joyous and so happy and so wonderful to be alive. In spite of all the medical conditions, all the challenges, I still face the same challenges in many ways that others do, but I experience them differently. I experience them in such a way that the challenges are resolved in front of me almost effortlessly. That's the truth of it. But I don't want you to have to wait 20 years to have that awareness and to move into the possibility of that identical experience. I promised God, well, I'm going to get soapy here now. Please forgive me, but I made a promise to God when I finish with my dialogue. Give me the time, and I swear that I will touch as many people on this planet as I possibly can to reduce the time they have to wait to get to what I have come to understand thanks to my conversations with God experience. I have this saying that I sometimes use on myself: so old, so soon, so smart, so late. But it doesn't have to be that way with you. And what I'm sharing with you is not exclusive to Neale. This is the great spiritual wisdom that all the spiritual masters, of which I am not, by the way, but that all the spiritual masters in the world have been sharing with us for centuries and for millennia. But somehow it's come clear. That's why millions of people have found that clarity in the Conversations with God material. So what is the power of this? The power of this is, gosh, dare I say it, it could change your life overnight.
And I know in this video gathering you've got a very special exercise to take everybody through that's going to have a very, very profound impact, and everybody's going to be able to see each other during the exercise. So another good reason to sign up right away. Neale, the ebook that is part of the special bonus for tonight, Dissolving the Illusion of Lack. Tell us just a little bit about that.
It does exactly that. It just shares principles that I have learned that allows us to dissolve the illusion of lack, that allows us to know that lack is, that is the effects of lack are illusory. And when the effects of lack become illusory, lack itself begins to change as well, because we see it. See, right now we are like, I often make this statement, we are as a magician who has forgotten his own tricks. We are like magicians. We've forgotten our own tricks. But what happens is when we open ourselves to a new perspective and a new perception about really what life is really all about, it changes the way we hold the experience of every aspect of life, including that aspect of life that we call lack. We begin to shift our ground of being regarding the illusion of lack, and we therefore dissolve that illusion and see it for what it really is. Not lack at all, but perfectly designed for us to experience life itself more grandly than we might ever have thought possible. So I want you to know that the book, the little booklet that I put together, discusses and moves people into clarity around that and helps them to really understand that lack itself, as is true of most of life, is an illusion. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't feel real. It can feel real, but it also can be eliminated from our life when we shift our perception and our ground of being with regard to it. And more than one person has experienced that change in their life. So what the booklet does, it gives you the foundational metaphysical spiritual principles around this business of lack and allows us to see it, frankly, in a simple sentence, to see it in a new way.
Love that. All right. This is all the time we've got for tonight. So, Neale, I just want to thank you so much It's just
I've enjoyed
so
being
amazing.
here. Thank you, my friend, and thanks to all the teammates at Evolving Wisdom. You know, all I want to do with my life is share this information with as many people as possible as rapidly as I can. That's all I really want to do. And Evolving Wisdom has made it possible to do so for many, many people in a way that makes it accessible for them, easy to use, puts it right there in front of them, makes it financially easy as well. I'm so grateful to the Evolving Wisdom team and the whole family there for providing such a wonderful platform, and I hope that people will take advantage of it. One final thing I might want to say, my dear friends, if you're still listening to this program, I want you to ask yourself a question. Do you think it's a coincidence? Do you think it's just serendipity? Do you think it's just just an odd happening in your life that you happen to be listening to these words right now, and that you've been listening for the past many minutes to what's been said here? Or do you think that you might just have been led here by a part of yourself that's been asking yourself, gosh, what are the answers? Help me. Send me some help. Send me some insight. I don't want to go on like this anymore. Send me some help and send me some insight. Look to see what causes you to be here right now and follow the impulse that brought you here to begin with.
And to do that, just go right now and click on the link that says visit the Conversations with God webpage. That's below the player box on the webcast page. Or simply type into your browser conversationswithgodcourse.com. Conversationswithgodcourse.com. And there you'll be able to read